All right. Oops, wait. Okay, I think we're better now. That was an awful sound for a moment. All right, everyone. Welcome to the final evening of the Kachemak Bay Marine Mammal Forum. My name is Kelsey Hansen, and I'm the Outreach Coordinator with the Alaska Wildlife Alliance. And really excited to bring this forum here to Kachemak Bay this year, being the first of its kind. It's been months, years in the making of folks really requesting information on marine mammals that are in the area, more about them, things that they can learn, and just really an opportunity to come together and discuss what people are seeing and celebrate what Kachemak Bay brings to Homer. It's a pretty special place on the planet, so we're excited to be sharing more on the marine mammals specifically. So again, my name is Kelsey, and I'm the Outreach Coordinator. If you need me, you can reach me that way. Tonight online, I'll be working through the chat with my Executive Director, Nicole Schmidt, and she's coming up as Nikki as an attendee. So if you get a chat comment from her, Nikki, it is her and myself giving you maybe a time cue or information that you're requesting. So look for those two names, either Nikki or myself, Kelsey. But if you're attending in person tonight, I want to give you a little information on the space. So there's a trash can in the back. It's just that bag that's kind of hanging up. And then we also have restrooms here at Land's End. Big thanks to Land's End Resort as well for letting us host here for the last 3 days. But if you're looking for restrooms, they're down the hall towards the charter room on your left. So just in case you need that. And this evening we'll be learning quite a bit on marine mammals, and I'll share that with you in just a moment. But I'm going to talk to you more about the Alaska Wildlife Alliance and those who took part in making this event possible. And I think we're frozen, so I'm going to adjust the screen real quick. Okay, so wanted to thank our partners in developing this forum. It really couldn't have been done without the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Kenai Peninsula College, specifically the Kachemak Bay campus. This is really what you've been experiencing the last 3-4 days, is really kind of the child of what has been months of work between a lot of people and collaborators in this. So I wanted to give a big shout out to everyone who's taken part. And I also want to thank the Homer Foundation for providing us with a grant to also assist in making this event possible. Really a big thank you to them, and couldn't have been possible without so many folks who were involved. And tonight we also have some tablers who are excited to share some information. Those who are in person, we have the Cook Inlet Keeper in the back, and we also have the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and then we also have the Kenai Peninsula College, the Kachemak Bay campus. So we'll be chatting more on some of their programs, including more information if you're interested in attending. Tomorrow night, they're having a big research symposium of some of the students. They're going to be giving research that they've been working on throughout the term. So please attend that, and there's more information from them in the back end if you're interested. If you're attending virtually and getting more information, put it in the chat and we'll give you the information needed for that. But if you want to just continue on the week with research, there's more tomorrow. Moving on, our schedule for the last evening, I'm going to give you a better breakdown in just a moment of just specifically the the speakers will have, but we'll be continuing on after the forum, after 6:30 at Alice's Champagne Palace, and that'll be from 7 to 9. We'll have marine mammal trivia. So if you're in Homer and would like to attend, we're really excited to see you all there. But we have recordings that'll be posted next week that were taken from Monday and Tuesday, or excuse me, Tuesday and Wednesday on the forum presentations we've had. All been different. So that'll be to check out later. And then Monday we had a discovery lab at the visitor center here in Homer, and that was a big hit. We loved seeing people in person and learning more about marine mammals. So again, tonight we're going to be talking about how to become whale ascent certified. That certification isn't taking place tonight, but we're providing information on that. And then we'll also have ethical and responsible marine viewing guidelines in that presentation. And we'll also have ethical skip behaviors around sea otters. That'll be from Fish and Wildlife Service. And then we'll be finishing up with wildlife response program and oil spill response. If you're interested in that, that'll be through the SeaLife Center. So I'm really excited about all of this tonight, and everything will be virtual, and we're going to continue through presentations this evening the best we can, and we'll wrap up at 6:30. If you're viewing online, please keep your mute on and your video off. That'll help with the bandwidth. Also view your screen in full screen mode so that you get all of the notes and images that are in the presentations. And if you get any questions tonight, please throw them into the chat at the last 10 minutes of the presentation where we will be addressing questions. So that'll be the Q&A session. And again, if you see people responding under the name of Nikki through AWA, that is also myself, and my director will be helping to direct questions as needed. So if you have never heard of the Alaska Wildlife Alliance, we have 3 pillars of work. We have advocacy, and we have citizen science and research, and we also have education and outreach. So we, for example, were down in Juneau last week at a wolf trial, and this month and finishing up in May, we're doing beluga whale monitoring with the Alaska Beluga Monitoring Partnership, or AKBMP. We co-host the Kenai and Kasilof River sites specifically, and we co-host those with the Kenai Peninsula College. So if you're down here on the peninsula, you can join in efforts with that. And education and outreach, if you want to get involved, my email's later on the slides, but we do a lot of tabling and interactives like this at forums, and just really enjoy getting to meet the community at different sorts of events. So there's more on our website if you're interested. To keep on theme with the week, we have a marine program through AWA. We kind of have 3 pillars of that as well. We take part in research, like with the beluga whale monitoring. We also take part in helping with marine debris groups and minimizing marine debris, or sharing information about marine debris. For example, we are on the Pinniped Entanglement group, or PEG, that has some international members. So we are bringing that to Alaska and helping with that. It was also founded in Alaska, fun fact, but we are taking part in that work. And we also have some regulatory protections. For example, we helped with filing a lawsuit to better protect or prevent harassment from the Beaufort Sea polar bear population up in the Arctic. And some folks forget that polar bears are marine mammals. So we do work all across the state in Alaska to make sure that wildlife are being scientifically and ethically managed. If you're interested in becoming a member with AWA, it's $35 a year, and all of that goes towards helping our programming and our mission to, again, protect wildlife in the state of Alaska. And if you're interested in supporting in other ways, there are opportunities for volunteering you can get involved in. Just email me there. You can beluga whale monitor. That website is found up there. And you can find us on social media, like, share, and comment any of our work that we're posting there. And you can also give back through some of the ways below, either found on your screen or up here on the slides. So there's lots of ways that you can really get involved in helping preserving and protecting Alaska's wildlife. So would love to see your smiling faces or meeting you all in person someday at any of these events in the future we have coming up. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to our first speakers here with NOAA. We have Barb and Bonnie, and I believe Suzie will be tuning in later, and they'll be sharing more information on ethical whale watching, and yeah. Strap in for all the fun. All right, can you hear us? Barb, can you hear us?
This is Bonnie. Kelsey, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Then you are live because I can hear you.
Barb said it looks like her mic is disabled.
It says it's enabled on our end. It might be worth logging out and then coming back in and seeing if that helps. We'll be here at the ready to let you in right away. For those who are just joining, I just want to give you a rundown. My name is Kelsey Hansen, and I'm the outreach coordinator for the Alaska Wildlife Alliance. We have a table here with AWA, and this is our executive director, Schmidt.
Okay.
Hi, Barb. Can you hear us?
Hi. All right. Let me try and share my screen again. I think that's when it kind of went weird. So.
Perfect. Wonderful. And we also have Fish and Wildlife and the college.
Let me
double check that you're. I'll let you make you a co-host again. Oh, no, you're good. Great, we can see it. You're muted, but we can see it. Like I'm dancing.
You hear me still?
Yes, I can hear you. And
Okay, I figured it out. Yeah, when I was sharing, it was it was removing my my audio. It was trying to share the audio from the tab.
Okay. Well, you're good now.
All right. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
All right, everybody. So hi, nice to actually be able to join you and let you hear me tonight. So I'm Barb Lake. I'm the administrative assistant in our NOAA Fisheries Alaska Regional Office in Juneau. I work with Suzie Teerlink, who's going to join us for the question session at the end of the presentation. And I'm presenting today with Bonnie Easley-Appleyard, who is in our Anchorage field office. And I've been tuning in all week and listening to all the presentations. So it's been really cool to see all the enforcement talks, the images of prop scars, and some of the well-known whales that you guys have in Kachemak Bay. And so we're going to talk about how to keep them happy, healthy, and safe. So we've got lots of outreach programs to talk to you about today, and whether you're a whale watching company, a recreational boater, a beachcomber, or a concerned citizen from 1 to 100. There are links in this presentation, and Kelsey will get the presentation to you guys so you can have access to all those links. And I'll drop my contact information in the chat. So if you're interested in participating in any of these or getting some of our materials that have to do with a bunch of these programs, feel free to get in touch with us and we can get those to you. So we're going to talk about Whale Sense, of course, our Bubble Room campaign, Do Not Feed Stellar Sea Lions, Lose the Loop, Strandings and Entanglements, Cooking the Beluga Whales, and our Ocean Guardian School program. So Bonnie's going to start us off with just a review of some of our federal regulations that you guys may have heard about if you were at the law enforcement talk yesterday. So go ahead, Bonnie, and take it away.
Great, thanks for the introduction, Barb. So there are two main United States federal regulations that protect marine mammals, the Marine Mammal Protection Act and the Endangered Species Act. All marine mammals are protected under the Marine Mammal Protection Act, and marine mammals that are listed as threatened or endangered are also protected under the Endangered Species Act. There's also a regulation under the MMPA specific to Alaska humpback whales that makes it unlawful for a person to approach within 100 yards of a humpback whale. And we'll talk a little bit more about this regulation in a little more detail later on. So both the MMPA and the ESA prohibit take. And typically when we think of take, we think of capturing or injury or mortality. But under the MMPA and the ESA, take also includes harassment. So harassment meaning disturbing a marine mammal that causes changes in their behavior. And I'll hand it over back to you, Barb.
Thanks, Bonnie. So we're going to talk about Whale Sense. And so if you are a whale watching company or a whale watching patron, this is the section for you. So what is Whale Sense? So Whale Sense is a voluntary education, stewardship, and recognition program for commercial whale watching companies. It started on the East Coast in our Atlantic region in 2009, and it's moved here to Alaska in 2015. And it's in partnership with our Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary and the Whale and Dolphin Conservation Group. And so what is Whale Sense? What is this program? So there are 5 guiding principles, and that's what the sense in Whale Sense stands for. So stick to whale watching guidelines, educate passengers and crew, notify officials of whales in trouble, and set an example for other boaters, encourage ocean stewardship. So these are just basic guidelining principles for the program, but most whale watching companies already follow most of these. And so becoming a Whale Sense member takes it a little bit further. So there are requirements to the program, and it's following the approach guidelines. So this is a really nice bullseye imagery here on the right that is some really good guidance on how to approach humpback whales, when to slow down, and to give them room when you're moving in to observe. There are requirements if you are a member of the Whale Sense program. So you need to reduce your speed on arrival and departure, and that's to reduce the wake around the whales. Limit your viewing to 30 minutes per whale, and communicate with other operators so that if there are issues, or if someone's been around a little bit longer than 30 minutes, you can kind of work together to negotiate space so that you're not overcrowding the whales. We do incognito ride-alongs for compliance checks. So we will sign up to go on the whale watch just like a regular patron and see if you are following the guidelines. So some of the requirements are, there's a training for crew, and we have about 200 crew across Alaska and all of our whale watching company members. And this training is completely online and accessible at any time of the year. So as you have crew join, they can take the training and they can refresh year after year. Conservation messaging on tour. And so as you're out on your whale watch, we're really hoping that you can implement into your conversation about whales what it means to be part of Whale Sense and what it means to protect whales while you're also viewing them. There's an annual stewardship project. So every company has to do a stewardship project, and there's some guidelines around what those are, but generally each company is able to make that stewardship their own and do what works for them. Responsible advertising. So this has to do with posting on social media or your website or your brochures, and making sure that you're not advertising something that is illegal to do on a whale watch or that isn't best practice. So, you know, nobody touching whales or jumping in the water with whales, because that's not actually going to happen on the whale watching excursion. And so just making sure that your advertising is in alignment with what the program requirements are. And then we promote your company on our website, and then on your website you can also cross post with the Whale Sense website, so that folks that when they're looking to book a whale watch know that you're part of this program and that you are the foremost company in protecting whales. And then there are annual meetings with industry collaboration. So it fosters operator relationships in the whale watching industry, because the whale watching companies are the experts in whale watching. And so it benefits them to show that they're doing it responsibly and to work together to make sure that everyone is following the rules and regulations. So normally there is an application deadline of April 1st, and then you have to meet the program requirements by May 15th, and we'll do compliance checks at that point. And we can extend the application deadline, but you still have to be able to meet the requirements deadline of May 15th. And so if you can't make that May 15th deadline, you can always implement any of the requirements of our program into your day-to-day operations. And then next year, it would be really easy for you to apply into the program because you're already halfway there. And if you are not a whale watching company, but you do, you're like a business, an organization that's interested in educating visitors and the public about the Whale Sense program and responsible wildlife viewing practices, you can become a Whale Sense proud supporter. And so these are on the bottom here are all of our current proud supporters. And if you're interested in becoming a proud supporter, you can reach out to us and we can help you get into that program. And so with that, if you aren't a whale watching company, but you're still out on the water with whales and you're more of a recreational boater, we still have something for you. So Bonnie is going to talk about our bubble room.
Perfect. So if you can go to the next slide, Barb. So this Give Whales Bubble Room has a lot of the same fundamentals as Whale Sense, but as Barb mentioned, it's geared more towards recreational boaters. So as we mentioned above, the federal humpback whale approach regulations under the MMPA require you that you don't approach within 100 yards of a humpback whale. That's 8 school buses. That's a lot of school buses. It also means that you do not place your vessel in the path of oncoming humpback whales, causing them to surface within 100 yards of your vessel. And you just don't want to disturb them from the normal behavior or prior activity the humpbacks were doing before you were reaching that area. Next slide. So to help with following that regulation, we have some tips to reduce your likelihood of harassing a whale. You don't want to let your vessel overwhelm or be there for too long. So limit your viewing time to a whale or a group of whales to 30 minutes. A whale could pop up at any time, so use a wide berth in areas that you see whale watching vessels idling or traveling slowly. And then don't be in your own bubble. Use VHF radio to coordinate with your other boaters and to reduce crowding and to avoid ship strike. And then go slow so that you reduce your spray and reduce the likelihood of you harassing a whale when you're approaching or departing. And then give more space when watching groups or mother-calf pairs. Next slide. So you should look out for popular behaviors that you'll see from whales that indicates that there's at least one whale in the area, maybe more, anywhere from a blow to peck slap, breaching, lunge feeding, pectoral arch or pectoral throw. And we have all of these materials on our NOAA website for this bubble room, give whales bubble room information that you can print out and have on your boat. Next, I'll hand it back over to Barb for Do Not Feed Stellar Sea Lions.
Yeah, so going from viewing marine mammals out in the wild to what you can do if you are maybe a fisherman or just encountering stellar sea lions, even on the beach or on the docks. So as you know, we've talked about this a lot this week, but interacting with wildlife can sometimes lead them to not be so wild and can cause issues for humans and the animals themselves. So our law enforcement officer talked about this, but habituation. So sea lions, marine mammals in general, they're very intelligent, they're very curious. And so if you start to feed them, they're going to lose their natural wariness of humans, associate people with food, and that's when you can have some pretty dangerous interactions. These sea lions can get aggressive and they can be unpredictable and show some aggressive behaviors towards people when they are then demanding food from them. And then it becomes very difficult to deter them from doing so. So negative impacts to fishermen, you can see in the series of photos, you don't want the sea lions to be harassing you, stealing your catch. It's not only bad for fishermen for loss of gear, but you can also have the issue where the sea lions are now swallowing that gear and getting entangled, like you can see in the photos below, where we have some flashers where the hook is probably internally hooked on their intestines and things, and usually leads to infection and then death. So not great at all. So we have this campaign of do not feed, take the lead, do not feed. And there's this really fantastic video that I'll have linked in this presentation. But we want you to educate others about the negative impacts about feeding stellar sea lions and discourage the practice when possible. And this applies really to all wildlife, not just stellar sea lions. But having a no feeding policy in your community goes a long way. And keeping a clean dock and a clean boat so that you don't leave whole fish or discarded fish pieces where sea lions can reach them, just to discourage them from associating people with food. And so like we were talking about with the sea lions then swallowing gear and getting hooks, we have this, the Pin-a-Pen Entanglement group, which Kelsey mentioned earlier, Lose the Loop. So anytime that you are throwing away marine debris or just trash in general, you want to make sure that if it has a loop that you're cutting that before you throw it away. So these are all examples of materials that entangle and materials that strangle stellar sea lions. They're very playful, very curious, and so they'll swim through these loops, get them stuck around their neck when they're young, and then they can grow into it, and it really ends up strangling them. So these are, loops that you may think are going, to the dump, never going to find it to the ocean. But the fact of the matter is that they do find their way into the ocean when you least expect it. So there's 3 things that you can easily do is responsibly stowing or disposing of all of your trash, especially if it has loops. And so you want to prevent nooses by cutting any loops before discarding it in the trash, keeping plastic and other discards out of the ocean, and reduce, reuse, and recycle. So people created marine debris and we can stop it. And so in talking about marine debris, I'm going to hand it back to Bonnie, and we're going to talk about our Stranding and Entanglement program and what we do after the fact of having an entangled animal.
Yeah. Thanks, Barb. So the Alaska Marine Mammal Stranding Network is composed of state and federal wildlife and fisheries agencies, veterinary clinics, Alaska Native organizations, and academic institutions who respond to or provide professional advice on handling strandings. So a stranded animal is one that is dead on the beach or in the water, one that is alive on land and unable to return to the water or its natural habitat, or an animal that needs medical attention. In most cases, the cause of the stranding is unknown, but some identified causes have been pup abandonment, injuries from ship strikes or fishery entanglements, pollution exposure, trauma, disease, and starvation. Stranded animals may provide information on species geographical distribution, feeding habits, reproduction, age distribution, disease, parasites, and contaminant levels. And so it's important for us to hear about strandings and collect information. The data that we collect also can help NOAA fisheries make better management decisions. So if you see a stranded, injured, entangled, or dead marine mammal, call the NOAA Fisheries Alaska statewide 24-hour stranding hotline, which is located right here on the screen. So save this number in your phone, and then you don't have to try to look it up, and you know exactly who to call if you see a stranded, injured, or entangled animal. Next slide. So what are the do's and don'ts that you should and shouldn't do when you see a stranded animal? So for your safety and that of the marine mammal, keep people and dogs away. Take photos from as many angles as possible without getting too close, and take note of the location and the status of the animal. Without authorization from NOAA Fisheries, the public cannot pick up stranded marine mammals. And sometimes it's not possible or safe to respond to a marine mammal stranding. So, get as much information as possible and stay away, but stay far enough away so you're not disturbing the animal more, causing more distress, and get in touch with us and we'll make a plan to move forward. Next slide. So then large whale entanglements. This number right here to call for large whale entanglements is the same number that was on the previous screen, our 24-hour stranding hotline. You can also call entanglements into the Coast Guard on channel 16. And then you want to, again, record as much information as you can and then wait. For Alaska's smaller marine mammals like seals and porpoises, death, unfortunately, is typically immediate and is due to drowning. However, for large whales like humpback whales, can typically pull gear or parts of it off of the ocean floor and are generally not in an immediate risk of drowning. However, they may drown or starve due to being restricted by the gear, suffer physical trauma, infections, or there can be an increased likelihood of being hit by a vessel. So you want to notify NOAA official by calling the hotline, as I mentioned, maintain a safe distance of at least 100 yards away, and again, take photos specifically of the head, fluke, and dorsal fin, and any of the gear that you're seeing on the animal. And then you wait for a trained, authorized personnel. Again, do not attempt to free the whale or disentangle the whale. It can be extremely dangerous. And actually removing trailing lines or buoys may diminish the chances of freeing the animal from all of the gear, potentially leaving some lethal wraps behind. So you want to continue to monitor the animal until you receive guidance from NOAA officials. Next slide. So the most important thing you can do, as I've mentioned, is collect information for NOAA fisheries that will help determine the appropriate response. Therefore, collecting information on the species, the size, potentially the age class, the date and time, and the location, the lat long. That lat long is really important, especially if you have to leave the area for some reason and can't continue to monitor. The condition of the animal, a description of the gear, and if the animal is moving, the direction the whale is headed. Next slide. So we wanted to touch base on cook inlet belugas here. Where are they at, and helping us keep track. Next slide. We know that seeing belugas down in Homer isn't extremely common these days, and we really want to hear about when you do see them. And so there's the cookinletbelugas.com website where you can go to that website and tell us when you saw belugas and approximately how many that you saw. And then the other website here, we have a new website recently. It's called Help Belugas, where you can learn more about how to get involved with cook inlet beluga conservation. Next slide. So one of those ways is by joining the Alaska Beluga Monitoring Program, AKBMP. This program was started in June of 2019 by NOAA Fisheries and partners, including the Alaska Wildlife Alliance. The partnership trains members of the public to monitor for cook inlet belugas and hosts monitoring sessions in the spring and the fall. Data collected during AKBMP are shared with researchers and federal agency personnel to inform ongoing marine mammal research and management activities. Now, the closest stations to Homer are the Kenai River and the Kasilof River. But we also have some in Anchorage. So depending on if you want to take a little drive and do a session and learn more, get trained up on the website and you can sign up for some sessions. Next slide. So another big event that we have every year is the Belugas Count. And some of you may be familiar with this. Besides during the pandemic, we haven't had it the last 2 years. NOAA Fisheries and partners typically put on an annual event called Belugas Count. We are currently planning the Belugas Count event for 2022, but we do know the date. It will occur on September 17th. In the past, we've had stations all along Cook Inlet, including Homer, where the community can go on that day during a certain time period and help look for belugas and count how many belugas we see. And then we get this nice big count of belugas and where they're at throughout Cook Inlet on that day. So as we get closer to the event and more information is available, you can check out the Belugas Count Facebook page. And next slide, I'll hand it back over to Barb to talk about the Ocean Guardian School Program.
Thanks, Bonnie. So the commitment to the protection and conservation of local watersheds in the world's ocean and special ocean areas is like national marine sanctuaries is the goal of the Ocean Guardian School Program. So this is an opportunity for students and teachers to work with the community and participate in a range of environmental and sustainable activities. So sort of a way to bring all of the programs that we've talked about today into the classroom. And so there's a pathway to become an Ocean Guardian school. And so it starts with some kind of project. So it needs to be something simple, hands-on, that the school or the community can do together. And it has to have that watershed and ocean connection. And the first year, it stays internal with just the school. And then after that, you can add in the community-based outreach component. You have to have measurable data. So we want to see how things have changed from before you were an Ocean Guardian school to when you started this project and what changes you've made with some type of measurable data. So kind of like using that scientific method in the classroom. And then you'll take the measurable data and have a final report in a survey and share that out to your school or the community that you've been working with. And then after that first initial year, it's sort of like a testing pilot year, you can then become an official Ocean Guardian school. And so the stewardship pathways, there's multiple. So there's 5 different pathways that you can choose to take, and you can do a different one every year. So Marine debris, that's looking at reducing single-use plastics, like in your cafeteria, putting in hydration stations, and using reusable water bottles. And then you could do something like outreach for promoting the use of reusable bags in grocery stores. You can follow the 6 R's, which is rethink, reuse, reduce, recycle, and rot. And so that's using zero waste lunch programs, bulk ordering food, considering the packaging of the food that you're buying for the cafeteria, and covering trash to prevent contamination or pollution of local watersheds. The third stewardship pathway here is watershed restoration. So that's the removal of invasive species, that could be plants or animals, replanting native plants, shorebank stabilization, revegetation of streams and creeks, anything like that. And you can go as far or as small as you want, depending on what capacity you have at your school. And so the school habitats and garden, that would be something in the schoolyard. So creating and improving gardens, low water use catchment systems, things like that. And then the last one here is energy and ocean health. And so that is looking at doing a school energy audit and seeing what your carbon footprint is and how you can bring that down. You can start a power down campaign. So powering down computers, turning off lights, having a no idling zone at school when kids are being dropped off, or a bike to school day, things like that. Really easy things that you can implement, or you can go big and put solar panels on your school. So once you've become a Ocean Guardian school, each year that you are part of the program, you'll get one of these really fantastic banners to hang in your school. And these banners in particular were created specifically for Alaska schools. So you can see this is our list of current schools, and we're always growing this program. So if you have a school in your area that you think would be interested, a teacher, anything like that, they can become an Ocean Guardian school. And so all they have to do is reach out to us, and we can help them get what they need to get started. And from there on, they always have that connection with NOAA. So if 3 years from now, they still want to have some kind of presentation from us, we're happy to continue that relationship. And so just an example, Sait Gastineau Charter School, they removed 28,000 plastic sporks from Juneau's landfill, and they started a composting effort in their cafeteria. And then Thunder Mountain started with beach cleanups and increasing their recycling, because their school didn't actually have a recycling program. And they reduced plastic water bottle use by installing some water refilling stations. So very cool ways that your community can get involved in protecting the ocean. And that's it for us. And so if anyone has any questions about any of these programs, feel free to ask, and we're happy to answer.
Well, thank you two so much. That was very complimentary, I think, with a lot of conversations we've been having this week. So I appreciate you adding some more information to the table. This is really a great thing for folks to have. So thank you very much. And before I forget, I will ask, if I don't bring it up later, that you leave your contact information of some kind into the chat, and then we can give that to folks here in person that would like it, and then everyone virtually will have that too. But before we wrap up, this will be a good opportunity. If you're virtual, throw your questions into the chat, and if you're here in person, I think we'll start with questions. And this is our microphone, so direct to that if you have anything. Questions to start. I had one. Earlier on with the Whale Sense program, I did hear discussion of humpbacks. Is that equally a relevant program for, I mean, if you're a whale watching operator, you could see orcas and humpbacks and minkies and all sorts of critters, but do the guidelines from the Whale Sense program, are they still applicable to viewing other whales? Is it, or is it pretty focused towards humpback watching?
Yeah, I'll let Suzie chime in just because she hasn't had a chance to say hi to everybody. And Suzie, if you want to take that one.
Sure, thanks, Barb. Sorry I was a little bit late, but my name is Suzie Teerlink. I also work in the Alaska region for NOAA Fisheries, and I've been coordinating the whale sense program in Alaska for several years. And so, yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having us. And the program is not specific to humpback whales, but there is sort of an emphasis because it seems to be the species that's most cited and most relied upon. When we first brought whale sense to Alaska, the program came to Juneau to start with, and that industry really focuses on humpbacks. As we expanded to other parts of the state, we just expanded those principles to other whales. The principles all apply, maybe with the exception of the 100-yard rule, which is just specific to humpbacks.
Okay, great, thank you. And I can see that is your photograph on the last slide, and it's lovely. Questions? One in the back. I might repeat it for you. Why is the 100-yard setback mostly of concern for humpbacks versus so many other marine mammals?
I might take this one too, unless you want to add anything to it, Barb. But the 100 yards is a great guideline for all marine mammals, and it's something that we advise certainly for all large whales. It just so happens that there was the political will to pass a law specific for humpback whales, and this had to do with humpback whale recovery at the time, and interest in whale watching, which had been increasing. And if I remember that rule, I think it's about 20 years old now, so it's been in Alaska for some time, and it's only for this region. There's a similar rule in Hawaii. There's a 100-yard rule there. But you don't see that in, say, west coast of US or Atlantic. And it really just has to do with NOAA fisheries looking specifically at what type of regulation do we need to make law, not just a guideline, in order to recover a species or protect a species. But 100 yards is a great practice for all species.
Great, thank you. Any other in-person questions right now? Okay. No questions right now. I think we're wrapping up, but that was very helpful. And the information you had on all your programs was tremendous. So thank you. I know we've had a lot of folks requesting that. So this will be recorded and folks will have access to it soon in the next week or so. And I also want you to know that a lot of your materials are off on our table here in person. So like Lose the Loop and the Guardian program, things that you sent us are here for folks to grab and get more information on if they have it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you all. This was really great and wonderful presentation, wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caroline, I believe you're next, and I'm going to make you the co-host real quick.
Hello. Yeah, thank you. Been having some internet issues, so if I share my screen, I might pop back out. But I'll say hi, everybody. I'm Caroline Cummings. I'm a sea otter biologist from Fish and Wildlife Service Marine Mammals Management Office in Anchorage, and I'm going to be talking to you about vessel operation guidance and best practices to avoid disturbing or injuring sea otters in Kachemak Bay. So am I a host, Kelsey?
Sharing screen now. So you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh, that's okay.
Can I see that? Let's see.
Double check. Neely's probably like, what is that?
All right, well, as I said, I'm Caroline Cummings. I'm a sea otter biologist from Fish and Wildlife Service. Thanks for having me here at the forum. As I said earlier, I'm going to talk to you about vessel operation guidance to avoid disturbing sea otters in K-Bay. Oh, let's see if it works. Well, are you guys seeing my screen advance?
It's not advancing, but we can see it. This happened with the last one too.
Okay.
It helps to stop sharing and then just reshare it again.
Okay.
It's like the turning it off and just back on.
Gotcha. Okay. Take two. Oops. I'm beginning. Oops. All right. That worked. You guys see that now?
Yes, you're good.
Okay. Sorry about that. So first, I just want to go over sea otter population status in the Bay to give you some background for where otters like to hang out and give you an idea of just how many sea otters call K-Bay and nearby areas home. So in this figure, you can see that portions of two different stocks of northern sea otters occur in Lower Cook Inlet, Alaska. Sea otters on the west side of Lower Cook Inlet are considered part of the southwest stock, and sea otters occupying the eastern side of Lower Cook Inlet are considered part of the south central stock. So what you can see is that K-Bay otters are part of the south central stock. Here we also see the overall distribution of sea otters sighted during replicate aerial surveys, which were conducted in May 2017. And the total abundance here was a little over 9,000 otters. The highest densities of sea otters in eastern Lower Cook Inlet were found along the northern shore of Kachemak Bay and in Port Graham. We also found large numbers of sea otters along the eastern shore of Lower Cook Inlet between Anchor Point and Clam Gulch. Adults are represented by red circles and pups are represented by the small green circles. So let's take a closer look at Kachemak Bay, where we all like to participate in all sorts of fun boating activities. So shown here, Kachemak Bay was partitioned from the rest of the inlet by this boundary for the purpose of these aerial surveys. And the overall abundance estimate for the replicate surveys flown in this survey unit in 2017 was nearly 6,000 otters, which is a lot of otters. So here we just have a heat map, which is depicting relative densities of otters in Kachemak Bay, just as another visual to show you otter hotspots. However, keep in mind that this is a snapshot of a specific space and time, and we do know that otters change their behavior seasonally, such as moving into shallower and more protected bays and inlets during the winter. Sea otter habitat is broadly defined as all nearshore maritime waters within their range. They occupy waters up to 91 meters deep, which is about 300 feet, and spend several hours a day foraging in waters usually less than 40 meters deep, which is about 102 feet. So overall, otters will be found both nearshore and offshore, and vessels operating in sea otter habitat run the risk of disturbing or striking otters. The average density in Kachemak Bay was 6.37 sea otters per kilometer squared. As sea otters have reestablished themselves, abundance estimates for Kachemak Bay have increased substantially over the past 15 years. But our 2017 estimate was not appreciably different from results of the last survey, suggesting that sea otters in Kachemak Bay may be approaching an equilibrium density. So overall, what do these numbers mean for boaters operating in Kachemak Bay? Expect otters everywhere, which I'm sure many of you know if you've spent any time in the bay. So some people here might be aware we have a marine mammal stranding program in Homer, And analyses from many of these stranding cases, Fish and Wildlife Service has found that trauma-related injuries, such as boat strike, is the second highest cause of death for sea otters in Kachemak Bay. And in fact, many otters get struck right off the spit here in front of Land's End. So why do some otters get hit by boats? Well, they're hard to spot in choppy conditions. They're not as big as some of the other marine mammals. It can be difficult for an otter to judge a boat's speed and direction. When otters come up from a feeding dive, like shown here, this otter eating a lovely sea star, they aren't aware of what's above them necessarily. Sea otters sleep very deeply and may not hear an approaching boat. New pups are too young to dive and they can't move out of the way of a boat. And a mom might not want to leave her pup, so she might be sticking with it and accidentally get struck. Some otters might be too sick to move out of the way of the boat. So one thing I definitely want to highlight, it is important to remember that sea otters are protected under the Marine Mammal Protection Act, which prohibits take. And take is defined as harassing, hunting, capturing, or killing. There are exceptions to this prohibition, including the lawful harvest of sea otters by Alaska Native people. But anyone operating a vessel or conducting other activities in sea otter habitat should understand how to avoid unlawfully taking sea otters. So I'm going to next provide you with some best practices to keep in mind while you're out having fun on boats. So as local boaters are well aware, and from what I have highlighted earlier in this talk today, is that Kachemak Bay contains very high densities of sea otters. And many sea otters in Kachemak Bay are habituated to human activities, and they may not always show a clear behavioral reaction to an approaching vessel. However, close encounters with humans may still cause stress to otters. Female otters with pups are especially sensitive to disturbance, which can interrupt patterns of feeding and grooming, which are critical to the health of pups and their mothers. While operating vessels in sea otter habitat, which includes all of Kachemak Bay, scan the water surface ahead of the boat for otters. They are difficult to see in choppy water conditions and in areas with kelp. They really blend in. If you're boating with another person, have them help search for animals from the bow or other clear vantage point. You might spot individuals, mother-pup pairs, or large rafts with many animals. When you see an otter or a group of otters, alter your course and slow down to avoid disturbance and collision. And don't assume the otters will dive or get out of the way of your boat. Even if an otter is alert, capable, and does dive or swim away when your vessel approaches, the action of knowingly staying your course would be considered harassment. So be sure to give all otters a wide berth when passing by them, and take extra precaution to avoid approaching and disturbing rafts of otters, especially with mother-pup pairs. They tend to hang out together. If a sea otter reacts to your presence by abruptly diving, swimming away, or looking at your boat in an agitated manner, you have gotten too close to the otter. The service recommends staying 100 meters away from individuals, 200 meters away from mother-pup pairs, and 500 meters away from rafts of otters when possible. And if you do encounter a group of otters, never pass between individuals. Go around the entire group with a wide buffer. Don't ever operate a vessel at any rate of speed heading directly at one or more sea otters. It is illegal to pursue or chase sea otters, and so never single out an otter or surround sea otters. When visibility is poor due to weather or darkness, travel at slower speeds to reduce the likelihood of collision and injury. And be aware that during poor weather conditions, sea otters are more likely to form large rafts to rest in protected bays and coves. So try to avoid these rafts and take extra caution to avoid disturbing them, especially if visibility is reduced. Sea otters might also haul out along the shoreline or on docks and on ice. So avoid approaching otters on shore or other platforms to prevent disturbance that may interrupt behavior and cause the otters to enter the water, which we would call flushing. So stay 100 meters away from otters on shore or other platforms when possible. And if you are out on the water or walking the shoreline and witness an injured or sick otter or any marine mammal for that matter, please call the Stranded Marine Animal Hotline, or here there's the email for the Alaska Sea Life Center Wildlife Response Team, and can provide them with information. If you're on the other side of the bay, Michael Opheim at Seldovia Village Tribe is also a great contact for stranded animal issues. And just always remember to keep your distance and never touch a stranded animal for both its safety and yours. Of course, I want to give some acknowledgements to all the work that goes on in Kachemak Bay. It's definitely a result of many contributions and dedication by numerous amazing people and partners. I mentioned the Sea Life Center already, USGS National Wildlife Health Center, Seldovia Village Tribe, the Refuge, NOAA Fisheries and partners, and shout out to Semester by the Bay students and Dr. Deb Tobin and other Fish and Wildlife volunteers. I know that some of our SBB interns are here tabling this event, so be sure to stop by and ask them questions or learn more about sea otters in Kachemak Bay. These are just the references that I have in here. Both of these reports are publicly available online if anybody wants more details on surveys. And I'm ready for questions.
Thank you, Caroline. Your presentation was really cute and informative.
Thanks.
Thank you.
It was kind of quick, sorry.
No, that is never a bad thing.
Let's see if I,
Questions if folks have them.
yeah.
Are there online questions we should start with? Or, okay. We have one to start here in person.
Sure.
Yeah, I always used to take an annual trip to Blackstone Bay, and it seemed like there were tons and tons of otters. And then when they opened it up to the jet ski tours, it seemed like the otters just completely disappeared. And I don't know if that's personal bias and anecdotal experience, but have there been any formal studies of those things zooming around so close and fast to shore?
We haven't done any formal studies about jet skis specifically, but we're made aware that jet skis were kind of a newer thing for Kachemak Bay. And of course, this vessel guidance applies to them as well. I'm sure being at very, fast speeds is potentially displacing otters from that environment now. If they are getting disturbed too frequently, they're going to move out. The thing about jet skis is, they're lower in the water. You might not have as great of a vantage point to be able to spot wildlife. To be able to actually adjust your speed or turn or try to, give a wide berth. But that is definitely something that I, coming out of this forum is, we want these same vessel guidelines to apply to all types of vessels and hopefully reach the jet ski groups and recreation, businesses, because it's, there's tons of marine mammals out in the bay, and jet skis are fast and loud, and I wouldn't doubt that they're causing some level of disturbance, but we do not have a formal study on that at this time.
Good to know. I didn't realize there was a difference between rafts of otters and mom and pup pairs and individuals, that there were distance guidelines. So that was I learned that tonight. That was very interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of a new thing that my office has developed. And I think someone from NOAA before said, the 100-meter guideline is a great starting point for all marine mammals. We kind of went a little further than that just for mother pup pairs, because they are more sensitive. And then if you see a large raft, you know, the second you disturb one otter in that raft, it tends to blow out the entire raft. So it's trying to, you know, mitigate for that disturbance as much as possible by giving them that extra few hundred meters.
Does that apply to river otters as well, or are sea otters completely a different ballgame than otters when viewing for river otters?
This is applying to sea otters. My office doesn't manage river otters. I would advise to keep your distance from most animals just to avoid disturbance. Even if you don't think you might be injuring an animal, you know, your presence still might change their behavior in a way that, you know, prevents them from doing something else like feeding or grooming or foraging. So just keep that in mind, I think, for all wildlife viewing. But specifics on river otters, I believe, is fish and game. So might have to look elsewhere.
I wondered, so that confirms. Thank you.
Mhm.
And we had a chat question.
In speaking to kayak distances, that distance might be hard when kayakers are keeping close to shore. So, any advice for, I think, kayakers?
That's great. We had a great question, and you might see it in the chat, but asking, so with kayakers, they're hugging a little closer to shore, and it might be harder to have those guidelines, maybe in particular, especially the further ones, to have to navigate around sea otters. Do you have advice for those type of operators and how to work with the guidelines?
Yeah, so, you know, kayaks are still considered, you know, a vessel. So we would want to stick to that as best we can. You know, I would still try to stick to the 100 meters if possible. If you're hugging shore, you know, I guess the good thing about kayaks is, you know, they're not motorized, and you're not going to quickly come upon an animal. And ideally, you can be vigilant and try to, you know, give a wide berth when you do see animals, or if you notice that you change their behavior, even if you're really far away. Sometimes animals pick up on you really, you know, really quickly. And so I think anytime if you are out there, just give a wide berth and do your best. And yeah, you might not be able to quickly move, but I would still recommend that 100-meter buffer.
Great, thank you.
One last question.
One more.
So someone else commented about being a change in otter population in Blackstone Bay, which is like everyone found. But is there any intention to study it?
Are there intentions to study the sea otter populations in Blackstone Bay?
Is that where the jet skis?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not super familiar with where Blackstone Bay is. Is it within?
It's right outside of Whittier.
Out of Whittier.
Oh, out of Whittier. Okay. Well, so yes. I mean, we conduct population surveys for all the stocks. It's rotates because Alaska's big and there's three stocks of sea otters in Alaska, but we do rotate through population surveys. Sometimes, depending on funding, we can do tagging studies. And there is interest actually in investigating disturbance studies. There's more support for that. So this is something good for me to know if there's specific areas that, you know, on the ground, you guys are seeing that there's disturbance. That might be something we want to check out. USGS also does a number of sea otter tagging studies in Prince William Sound, and they probably have the most data for like activity budgets and habitat use and other data like that that's more specific. But I would definitely be interested to maybe connect and kind of hear what you're seeing, you know, it's good to get information directly from the community because those are the people that are out there.
That would be great. And I know I have one more question, but before I forget, if you could throw a good contact for you or someone related to this topic into the chat so that people can reach you and ask more questions, that would be great. And we'll have that. We can share that with folks in person that would like it, and it'll be virtually available. And we're here presenting in person at Land's End Resort. And is there anything you would like us to know about sea otters and operation guidelines related to point here at the spit?
At the spit, yeah. So I touched on it a little bit in the presentation, and going back through a lot of our data, we see trauma cases that are usually listed as blunt force trauma attributed to boat strike. And for whatever reason, a lot of these animals get hit right off of Land's End. I don't know if it's because boaters are, coming around that corner really quickly to get into the harbor. If there's just not as good visibility, perhaps, because you're, again, making that corner around the spit. You might not see a group of otters or individual otters because a lot of otters also forage off the spit. But then we get, these boat strike cases, and then, otters haul out on the beach right there at Land's End. And, it's definitely a concern. A lot of tourists are there, and no one wants to see that. From an animal welfare perspective, it's really hard to see. And again, the population is doing really well in Kachemak Bay, and we think they might be approaching carrying capacity. However, from that individual animal welfare standpoint, it's really hard to see boat strikes over and over and over again. So it's something that, we want to get out to the public and the boating community, that just be really mindful out there. And in particular around the spit, there's lots of animals, and just be careful because you might not see them right away, and they might not get out of the way fast enough. So thank you for listening and hosting to get some of these guidelines out there.
Yeah, well, thank you very, very much for spending your time this afternoon and for making a lovely presentation that was, again, very adorable, also very helpful. So I hope that folks can take a lot away from this. It'll be great to have the message shared. So thank you again, and we will stay in touch, but otherwise, thank you, and we're gonna bring in our next presenter, but great job.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. We have enough room. We're actually ahead right now. I'll give everyone about a 3 to 5 minute break, and I'm going to bring in our last presenter. And that will be from the Alaska Sea Life Center, talking about the marine stranding network and some other ways you can help marine mammals in distress. So it'll be a pretty cool last way to bring us home. And I'm going to chat with the presenters, and you can stretch your legs.
Come get the candy.
Yes, candy, get a sugar rush. Feel the otter pelts, how appropriate. Perfect. And break. Seatbelt sign is off. Savannah, can you hear me?
I can you hear me?
Yes, I will make you the co-host real quick. Is Jane joining you?
She is joining me. We are actually, I didn't have my video on, but hi, she's actually in the same office. I think what we are going to do is kind of just use the same computer for sake of ease. And so once I'm finished with the first half, Jane will take it over for the second half, and I'll just move out of the way and Jane will move in.
Perfect. That'll be great. We'll get started here in just a couple of minutes, but while we have the opportunity, could you share your screen and bring up your presentation and just check that the slides are transitioning The last couple have just had to do that process a couple of times to unstick it from frozen.
Absolutely. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
And does it show the PowerPoint?
Yep.
Did it?
Great. I think you should be good then. If there are any issues, if it freezes up, you'll just unshare your screen and bring it up again and it should be set. But I think we're good to go then. I'm going to put this computer on mute just for a couple of minutes and then we'll bring you back in about maybe 3 minutes.
Okay, great. See you then.
Yep, see you. All right, we will get seated again. We'll get started here in just a moment. Savannah and Jane are psyched. They've been waiting years for this moment. All right. Wonderful. So Savannah, you were muted, but just in case you know, this is our final presentation for the Kachemak Bay Marine Mammal Forum 2022. So I will leave it to you all to bring us on home.
Perfect. Not going to say you saved the best for last, but so my name's Savannah. I am an animal care specialist here working out of the Alaska SeaLife Center's Wildlife Response Department. And this is Jane.
Hi guys, thanks for coming.
She is our wildlife response curator, as well as vet technician for the entire SeaLife Center, not just the Wildlife Response Department. And today we are going to be talking about a little bit about our wildlife response program, kind of like the animal recovery side, as well as oil spill response. Going a little bit further into it, a little bit about our background for those of you who may not know what the SeaLife Center is. The SeaLife Center actually opened in 1998 through city and state support through the Exxon Valdez Oil Spill Trustee Council. So a lot of our first basic funding to start the SeaLife Center did come from funding from the Exxon Valdez oil spill, as well as through private donations. However, that is not how we are funded today. Today, we are a nonprofit mainly funded through grants, donations, as well as ticket sales through our front gate. We are a AZA accredited public aquarium. So the front side of our house, guests can come through, see some of our amazing Alaskan animals that we have on exhibit. And then behind the scenes, we are more of a research focused facility, as well as our wildlife response marine mammal rehabilitation program. We are the only marine mammal rehabilitation facility for the entire state of Alaska, which is pretty wild. The goals of the wildlife response program specifically, we always want to make sure that we are rehabilitating for release whenever possible, but we all know that release is the ultimate goal. Sometimes that just doesn't happen. And so we want to make sure that we are preparing the animals that need to be placed into an accredited facility, that we are preparing them for their life in amazing human care. But not only that, we want to make sure that we're gathering knowledge. We want to make sure that we are collecting data samples, whether it's measurements on animals, behaviors, formulas, scats, swabs, things like that, not just for current research projects that are going on, but we'll actually archive those samples in case future projects come along. We also want to make sure that we're improving best practices. We never want to be stagnant in our kind of health medicine and we want to make sure that we're using the latest and greatest technology if we're able to, reading research papers out there of like what's the best formula for these animals and things like that. But not only that, stranded animals are a great indicator of the health of our oceans. And so seeing a large stranding event or multiple animals stranding in one location could indicate a problem within the ocean within that one certain area, which then could then lead into disease monitoring. Like I said, we swab a lot of our animals, and so we send those off to testing. We can actually test if these animals did come in with a certain disease, or if an animal was found deceased if it did have a certain disease. And not only that, but we want to make sure that we're training staff and volunteers, as well as lovely people just like you guys who come to presentations like this on what is a stranded animal and what to do if you find a stranded animal. To go a little bit backtrack though, marine mammal management is separated into two categories. So we do have our U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, who manages polar bears, walruses, and sea otters. And then we have NOAA NIMS, which handles our seals, sea lions, whales, and dolphins. And that's for the entire United States as a whole, just not the state of Alaska. But kind of breaking it down into the state of Alaska in the top right here, we do have our special little section southeast. We are located in south central, southwest, and then there's a southwest, interior, and far north. And we do have stranding agreement holders, or NOAA has stranding agreement holders within each of these areas that will kind of take the lead on if they see a stranded animal, decide if that animal needs rehabilitation, and then that's where we come in. We never make any decision on if an animal needs to be picked up. The government always has the final say. Going into kind of our challenges just for being in Alaska, Alaska is big. It is really, really big. We are actually in charge of more coastline than the entire lower 48 combined, as far as being the only rehab facility. The entire lower 48, we basically cover it all. Wild. The road system, not all of the places within Alaska are on the road system. A lot of our kiddos, a lot of our patients do come from a plane, whether it's down through the Juneau region or some of our ice seals up in the Arctic region, or even up in the tippy top past the Arctic Circle. Not only that, weather plays a big challenge because we can't necessarily get to some of these remote locations unless they are by boat or plane. And we all know, as far as those who've been in Alaska for a little while, the weather can be super challenging. The wind, the waves, just everything, which can kind of limit our response to an animal. As well as communication. We don't have cell signal in a lot of part of Alaska, and we don't have access to satellite phones all the time, right? So a person may see an animal way out in the bay, like a day before, and they're just now getting into harbor, and they're just like, yeah, I saw an animal like a day ago. And so communication does play a big part of our challenges. And some of the challenges, subsistence lifestyle. A lot of people in the lower 48 want to save absolutely everything that they can, which is great, fantastic. However, we totally understand the subsistence lifestyle up here and the fact that Alaskan natives do subside on some of the animals that we are trying to rehabilitate, and we always will respect their wishes. And if they want to subsistence hunt an animal, absolutely, they will have that. So I've been talking about a lot of animals, marine mammals. What exactly do we respond to? Well, let's get into the dead stuff first. Some of our dead responses, for the most part, are going to be your large whales. We can't necessarily bring in our very large humpback whale into the SeaLife Center. We just don't have the capacity to that, but we will send our vet staff out to the beach to perform necropsies to find out why this whale stranded, why this animal is stranded. We'll work with local NOAA partners to kind of put the best team together to respond to these situations. And sometimes if there's a large dead stellar out on the beaches, we'll send a team out to do collections as well. So it's not just necessarily mammals, or whales, but for the most part, it typically is. And then the live animals, right? We have responded to everything from harbor seals, ring seals, spotted seals, bearded seals, ribbon seals. Those last four are ice seals. And then just this year, we've already responded to an elephant seal. We've gotten northern fur seals, Guadalupe fur seals, which are really interesting, stellar sea lions, California sea lions, harbor porpoises, sea otters, Tai, the wonderful beluga calf, and Aku, the amazing walrus calf. One of the questions we get a lot, though, are what are our main two most common patients, or what are the most common patients that you guys are going to kind of encounter? And that's going to be our harbor seal pups and our sea otter pups. Just to give you a little bit overview of the last year that we had, so the last summer season, 2021, our wildlife response hotline got over 378 reports of distressed animals, which is pretty consistent, as you can see on this chart, within the past 2 years. And of those 378 reports, we responded to 129 of them. To break down those 129 responses, 78 of those are sea otters. A lot of those are sea otter carcasses within the Kachemak Bay region. So we do kind of send out a team, collect data, try to figure out what's going on with those sea otters out there. if we are able to. 24 of those responses were pinnipeds, so your seals, your sea lions, 24 were birds, and 3 were cetaceans. But this is all well and dandy, but what do you do if you see an animal? What do you guys do as just a citizen out on the beach, or you're working out on the beach? What do you do if you see an animal? Call first. I can't stress this enough. Call first. Don't approach the animal. Animal may just be out resting, doing its thing on the beach, and it just may need a little rest and relaxation. So we don't want to stress that animal out any more than it could possibly potentially be. If you want to go ahead and everybody whip out your phones, I know during a presentation, everybody's like, no phones. But if you want to put this phone number into your phones right now, 1-888-774-SEAL, so 7325. This is our 24-hour hotline to our wildlife response program. It is manned 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I've gotten a call at 3 a.m. before. I promise you we will answer. If we don't answer right away, please feel free to leave a message and we will for sure call you back, because we want to make sure that we are doing what's right for the animal. And how do we know what's right for the animal, right? Is the pup abandoned? So you see a harbor seal pup out on the beach. How do we know if it's abandoned or not, right? Harbor seals will leave their young for periods of time while they go off and forage. So just because you see this cute little baby harbor seal, it looks super alone, some people even say scared, oh my gosh, it's calling for its mommy, but it's just vocalizing, being a normal harbor seal. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's alone, that it's abandoned. But once a pup is moved, there's very little chance that a mother can find it again. So if you are concerned about an animal, just go ahead, call that number, and we will kind of walk you through several questions to kind of figure out, is this pup abandoned or not? Some of the questions that we ask, I'm unsure if I included it later, is just like, are there other animals in the area? Is it super weak? Is it kind of alert, knowing what's going on? Are there any obvious wounds? And does it have a nice white fluffy coat, indicating that it should really probably be with mom? But like I said, we want to make sure that we're kind of talking it out with you guys out on the beach, so never feel like you are alone. Sea lion pups. So these are our stellar sea lions. Those are usually born in offshore rookeries, and mothers will leave their pups alone for several days while foraging. However, these pups typically should stay out on those rookeries for an extended period of time. So if you see a stellar sea lion pup, for sure call. Once again, always call first, and we're going to walk you through. Sometimes mom will the pup will just come along with mom, and mom's like, all right. But we just want to make sure that we're not kidnapping any baby animals out there. Sea otter pups. These animals are very, very dependent on their mothers for survivals. Mom do absolutely everything for them, basically up until the 6 months of age. But mothers will leave their pups for brief periods of time to dive and to forage. They need to eat too. And once an animal is removed from the ocean, from the care of its mother, typically sea otters usually cannot be released back to the ocean. And that's because their moms do absolutely everything for them, that U.S. Fish and Wildlife has deemed them non-releasable just because of the amount of care that our staff here has to provide for these animals. They would not be able to survive out in the ocean on their own. They would go up to people looking for food. They wouldn't know how to catch food. And so we want to make sure that we're not kidnapping any little baby sea otter pups from their mom. However, that being said, there's a little bit of a time sensitive situation with sea otters. Sea otters eat 25 to 35% of their body weight a day. If not, they can actually have hypoglycemic seizures. And so we want to make sure that we are doing what's right from the animal, that we're not kidnapping it, but we want to make sure that we're staying a good distance away but keeping an eye on that animal. And are there any other animals in the area? Is mom way out in the place or way out in the ocean feeding, but she felt like this place was really safe? And that's once again something that we will talk you guys through. So if you ever do see a sea otter pup alone on the beach, please feel free to give us a call, because it is a little bit of a time sensitive situation, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it has been abandoned by its mom. So what can you do? So you are out on the beach. You come across an animal that you are concerned about. Go ahead and take a photo on your smartphone of the animal and its surrounding. And I don't mean, don't get the glamour shot of it right up in its face that you're going to post on Instagram later. I'm talking, like I said, you never want to approach an animal and potentially stress it out more than it already is. So you just want to take, say 100 feet away, if possible. Sometimes I know you're out walking the beach and then you just like, oh my gosh, it's right there. But nice, calm, take a picture. Don't get too close to it. If there's any landmarks around, like a mountain, or there's like a stick or a log, feel free to go ahead and take a picture of that in relation to that, so that when we send trained volunteers or police officers or animal control out to potentially rescue this animal, they can very easily see exactly where this animal is. Like I said, you want to make sure that you're giving this animal plenty of space to avoid disturbing them further or stressing it. Sometimes they are having a really bad day, and just running right up on it because it's super cute, you want to get a picture, it's not best for the animals. And if you're able to, go ahead and help keep other people away from the animal. I know a lot of beaches in Homer are off leash beaches, and so some dogs may be roaming around, and that's only if you're comfortable. Don't feel like you ever have to put yourself in a situation that you are not comfortable with. And then as you're several feet back from the animal, you already have your pictures taken, you're giving us a call. Be prepared to answer some of these questions that we're going to have. Does it appear skinny, weak, or injured? And it's totally okay to say, I don't know. Right? Because you have that picture, and that picture is super helpful for us because we're going to have our senior staff here, our vet staff, look at it and be like, oh yeah, that animal looks pretty weak. Oh, this animal should be this robust at this life stage. Are there any animals, or is the animal alone? Are there any other animals out in the ocean that you can see? Are there a lot of people? Are there people driving on the beach? Are there a lot of dogs around? And how long have you observed this animal? I know sometimes people know the kind of life history cycle of our harbor seals and our sea lions. And so they're just like, yeah, I was spending the day at the beach and I left the animal alone, but I've been here for like 2-3 hours now and I'm starting to get worried. Be sure to include that information when you give us a call. And always, we're just going to walk you through these steps, but never pick up a wild animal. Point I'm trying to get across. We want to make sure that we are doing what's best for the animal, that we're not potentially kidnapping any baby animals from its mom, but we want to make sure that if an animal does need help, we are able to help it. And then I think this is now going on to Jane to talk about our oiled wildlife response team.
Hey, everybody. So another component of our department is not only to be trying to figure out what might be happening to some deceased animals, as well as rehabilitate live animals, but we're also here to respond in case there is an oil spill. This is a relatively new project for us, being that it's 12 years old now. We started back in 2010, and that was partly in response to what happened to the oil spill, to the Horizon oil spill down in the Gulf of Mexico, in that they realized that there was a big need for people to help, but in order to help for an oil spill, you need to be HAZWOPER certified, and you need to have some other certifications that are above what a normal animal caretaker would have. So that also got us involved into, like, what if we have another catastrophic oil spill up here in Alaska? Who's there to help? Well, the last time this happened, when the Exxon Valdez happened, there wasn't an organized group to help, but fortunately a bunch of people came together and made it happen. But now that the SeaLife Center is here, we were ready to start to put together some organizations so that we can help in case there is a catastrophic oil spill. So currently we have around 30 full-time staff members on the team. And so that's animal care people, veterinarians, technicians, specialists. But also you have to think about, if we're going to be rehabilitating marine animals, we have to support their environment. So that's why we have life support technicians to work with the water quality and the plumbing. We have researchers and educators as well, who are not only able to help with animal care, but they can also lend some extra expertise into some of the things we have to do during an oil spill. So a big part of what we do is hoping it won't ever happen. But with that, we are maintaining preparedness. So the staff who are here, who are trained in HAZWOPER, you have to do a 24-hour course to get started. And then yearly, you have to do an 8-hour refresher. So for the staff that are trained, we maintain that certification. And then it's also maintaining the equipment. When you have equipment sitting for a while, you want to make sure that it's still in good condition so that in case it is needed, it'll work. Then we've also been working on expanding our capabilities by training other partners in HAZWOPER, so that if there is something that happens up here, we have people from other places who can jump in and start helping us. So we've been working with AZA zoos and aquariums and training them in HAZWOPER. And then also we've been participating in local training and drills with some of our industry partners and government agencies, which has really been helping to expand the net that can help in case something happens. So people think that, oh my gosh, there's an oil spill, the SeaLife Center is just going to jump right in. Well, it's not quite that simple. There is a huge, there's a bunch of folks who have a weigh in as to when we respond and how we respond. And so there are certain organizations within Alaska that we have contracts with that in case there is an oil spill, they will activate us. So in your neck of the woods for Cook Inlet, we are partners with CISPRI, which is the Cook Inlet Spill Prevention and Response Incorporated. And so they represent some of the oil companies that work with the platforms and stuff that are in Cook Inlet, that in case there is an oil spill, this is the company that responds with the cleanup. And some of you from Seldovia or from the area might be aware that there is a Sea Otter Rehabilitation Center in Seldovia that is run by Seldovia Oil Spill Response. And so we have a partnership with those folks. But then up in the North Slope, we have a partnership with Alaska Clean Seas. And then in South Central and Southwestern Alaska, and this is a new partnership for us. It just came together in the past year with Shadow. So these are, again, 3 companies that their job in Alaska is in case there's an oil spill, they're contracted with the oil companies, that they are the ones to respond and organize the cleanups and the animal rehabilitation. So that's further reinforces that if there is an oil spill, it's not just an immediate jump in there, guns blazing type of situation. It's a part of a much bigger organization in that there are federal people, there are state people, RP is the responsible party. If it is a small fishing boat or a small company that's not necessarily represented by a big company, that's when the government or the Coast Guard might step in to take care of help be the responsible party. But as you can see, wildlife, which is on the bottom left-hand corner, is a small part of a much bigger network. And then within that, then our network within that is even more expanded, where, you know, if you think about it, you have an oil spill. We're not necessarily the ones cleaning up the oil, but we might help with reconnaissance, like what animals are being affected. Are there animals coming into the area that maybe they need to be hazed to not enter that area? If we do have oil spilled animals, then that goes into another group where we are the ones who try to clean out the oil and take care of any health complications that might be coming from the animal being exposed. And then we also have the recovering team that, like, afterwards, what do we do with the animals afterwards? Because sometimes, like in this, like what happened with Exxon, is you can't necessarily just release the animals back into their original area if it's been destroyed by the oil. So there's a whole nother organization that kind of helps figure out where these animals are going to go once they're cleaned. Ideally, they'll go back to their original area. But again, our department is just a big department that's within a whole nother realm of oil spill recovery. All right. So a lot of people think that, okay, we're the Alaska Sea Life Center. We were built from the Exxon Valdez oil spill. But like we said before, that our building isn't what some of the monies from the settlement from the Exxon Valdez oil spill helped build the Sea Life Center, but it doesn't necessarily currently fund the Sea Life Center. And when the Sea Life Center was put together back in 1998, its emphasis was research and education and rehab. And so it wasn't built to receive oiled wildlife. That's because we don't have the proper waste recovery to handle that oil. But since then, we have made some changes so that we can possibly take in some animals, just not necessarily into the Sea Life Center itself. And that goes to, that goes into some of the things we have that are remote. The first one being the Sea Otter Rehabilitation Center that's over in Seldovia. Some of you might have seen it, but it is some connexes underneath a roof, and there's some pools in there. There's some smaller holding areas, and we have those connexes further divided into like a veterinary room, an oil spill cleaning room, a food prep room. There's a nursery in case there's pups. So it basically has everything we need to take care of sea otters in one area. And then that other box that you see on this slide is, once an animal is recovered or strong enough, there's actually a capability to build some sea pens further out in that harbor so that the animals can again continue to recover but yet still be looked after after they've been done with intense care. So that's one of the remote situations that we can work with. The other one is what we call the MTRE, which is the Mobile and Treatment and Rehabilitation Enclosure. So this is basically a mobile pool that we can set up anywhere. We currently have one at the Sea Life Center, and they're on pallets. And then we have one up in the North Slope with Alaska Clean Seas up at the North Slope in storage up there. And what does this pool do? Well, for some of you who may have been to the Sea Life Center in the last, 8 years or so, might have seen one of our MTREs put together, because we've had various animals in there over the years in our area called ICU. So it is about a 15-foot diameter pool that we can raise the water level to whatever we need, and we can have animals in it. It was originally built for seals, but over the years, we've had otters in there. Our baby beluga was in there. We kept it empty for a while when we had one of our walrus calves. Right now, this active pool doesn't exist anymore. It started leaking a lot, and we actually had to kind of tear it apart to get our bearded seal out of there because he grew so big and we couldn't lift him out. We had to like tear the pool apart to get him out, didn't get him into a bigger pool. But again, we do have one of these that is not put together, stored at the Sea Life Center. And then we have our own connexes, which is the idea is that have an oil spill, we can be there. All of these connexes can be either travel on a truck or be put on a barge. and we call them the mobile response units. And we actually have 2 sets of these. And they consist of 4 connexes. So we could have like a double response, or if there's an oil spill that's over a large area, we can maybe have 2 separate response units if we need to recover into, if we need to attend in 2 different areas. So one of the connexes is a veterinary clinic. Another one is a food preparation area that has its fridge and freezer and all the knives and the stuff we need to do to properly prepare food for the animals. And then in the veterinary clinic, it has the ability to run some lab work, as well as do exams and anesthesia if we need to. We then have a storage unit that is also kind of our power converter, in that we can connect to either an available power source, or if we have to use generators, depending on how remote we are. This is also an area with the idea that we can do the cleaning outside the connexes if the weather is decent, and we have tents and stuff like that. And when it comes to recovering the oiled water, the wastewater from these cleaning operations, they can be collected in super large bladders, and then the responsible party or whatever organizations is in charge of disposing of this waste can then take it away. And then, of course, we have to have a place for the caregivers to live, because we're going to be working 24/7, but we still want to take some naps. So there's some basic caregiver quarters, which I hope will, there's a little heater in there to keep us warm, and some cots, and like a refrigerator and stuff like that. So again, we have 2 sets of these here at the SeaLife Center that we can essentially set up our recovery animal response unit within 24 to 48 hours of our call to action. So, and not only do we need the buildings, but you need a heck of a lot of supplies. You need all the medical supplies to take care of the animals and to clean them. Dawn dishwashing, liquid, just like they say on that commercial, it actually does work really well with removing oil from animals. We have fish totes that we can use as cleaning stations or recovery areas for animals that will fit in there. So lots of stuff for the animals. And then for the humans also, we have special go bags for the teams that are going to go, because we'll need slickers and boots and gloves. And with COVID, you know, we'll need extra masks and stuff like that. We basically have several storage areas in the SeaLife Center that can just be packed up into those connexes, and then we're ready to go to respond to an animal concern.
And Jean?
Yes. Oh, we're almost done? Okay, I'm almost done too. So again, a big part of it is that we can't do this in a vacuum. You have to be specially trained in oil spill awareness. And so we partnered with the AZA, with the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, and UC Davis, and some of our staff became HAZWOPER certified to teach the class. And as a result of that, we have been able to train over 400 people in different zoos and aquariums to be able to respond to oil spill. And like I said earlier, the staff, we're trained here, and we keep up our renewals. And so here you can see us in some of our PPE, our personal protective equipment. And then also to keep up our skills, not only do we keep our HAZWOPER in tune, but we also participate in drills. As a matter of fact, just last week, we had a capture and handling workshop with some folks from CISPRI. And then earlier this week, we participated in a drill with Hill Corp. That was like a tabletop drill where we said, like, this is what's happening and what do we do? And it brought a bunch of different organizations together in the government and in the industry to talk about what we would do during a drill. But as I can say, it's just so crucial for the SeaLife Center to have experienced staff here year round to respond to any type of animal concern, whether it's natural or it's man-made, like an oil spill. So just to summarize, if you haven't had a chance and you don't have this number in your phone, make sure to put it in your phone that if you come across a marine mammal concern, give us a call at our hotline. And then if you're interested in helping in other ways, we are on Amazon Smile. We have wish lists On our website, you can adopt animals or become a member or just general donations. We are a nonprofit organization, so what helps us is our ticket sales, grants, and of course, the big part of it is donations from the public. And then if you're interested as well, we do have, well, as you might have met already during this forum, is that we do have a volunteer group in Homer who help us a lot with data collection from dead otters and are available to help with live animal recovery in Homer. And then we also have volunteers who can come to Seward as well. So we have our website, alaskasealife.org. We are on the social media. And also, some of you might have seen, we actually had a television show on Disney Plus called Alaska Animal Rescue, where it was us, the Conservation Center in Portage, and the Raptor Center in Sitka. And they followed us for 2 years. And that was an interesting 2 summers when we had the camera crews following us around. Like I said, we work with the government. The government is what gives us the authority to do these programs. And so we have a lot of permits that we have to work with. And that's what I got. Here's some wonderful pictures of one of our sea otter pups during a winter snow day. And so do you guys have any questions for Savannah or myself?
Great. Thank you so much, Jane and Savannah. That was lovely and also adorable. It was good to follow up from the sea otter presentation as well. So thank you. Love the wrinkly walrus also.
Oh my gosh, you gotta love a wrinkly walrus calf. Yes.
So great. We do have a question here in person I'd like to ask you, and we don't have a ton of time for Q&A, but we'll try to get to at least 1, maybe 2 if we can.
Actually, I just wanted to say I was around for the oil spill and there was no response. Everything was so unprepared. And it's really great to see that you're prepared, because I know it still will be overwhelming if something like that happens again, but it was so pathetic what happened.
Yeah. A lot of what we learned was what happened from the Valdez oil spill. For the person who participated in the recovery on that, Dr. Tuwami, who was our founding veterinarian here, she was a veterinarian at the oil spill, and so through her experiences, we built the program we have here today.
Great.
Oh,
we have 1 question in the chat. I think that'll be the one we get to tonight, and then. Before I forget, if you can throw a contact into the chat for folks in person to have, that would be helpful, and virtually. But the last question we have from Shauna or Shana. Do you interact with the facility Alaska Housing Valley? Is there an oil spill response for yourself?
Yes. So yes, there's actually a different group. They are called International Wildlife Research. And they have the contract for Southeast. And so they actually have a similar Connex situation with a veterinary clinic and animal recovery areas that is packed up in Valdez. And so they have their own drills and stuff like that they do. And in the case of an oil spill, depending on what help they need, we are available to help them. And I believe they have a training once a year. That's usually in March or April. I've gone to several of them, and they do some pretty good basic overview and of getting folks on a list that if there is an oil spill in Southeast, that you're on their list and then might be called if they need some response.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. That's very helpful. And we have your information in the chat, but I just want to say thank you again. You did a great job, and thanks for wrapping us up for the forum.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting us.
Of course. Thanks for being here. Have a good evening.
You too.
Okay, that is a wrap, everyone. If you have been attending multiple nights, or even if this is your first and only night, we do have some surveys. If you can spend the time just checking through that and giving us some feedback, it's very helpful so that we know what to bring for the community next year and how we can improve the things that we did well. So surveys here. Otherwise, we'll see you at
marine mammal trivia analysis. Woo! It's all about marine mammals. Yeah, I'll put it up. Okay. And Liz in front of it. Excellent.